Well, it's been four and a half years since I thought about starting a BookTube channel. So sounds like it's the right time to finally get started. Better late than never, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to my channel, everyone. My name's Elizabeth, and I am very excited to finally get started on this BookTube project that's been kicking around the back of my mind for a really long time. If you want, grab a drink, settle on in, and I am going to take you through Brenda C's newbie BookTube tag. I will put a link to her original video as well as a list of all the questions. So if you feel inspired to start your own BookTube channel, you can start off with this tag and consider yourself tagged in the process. So let's get started. The first question, why did you start this channel? I think I'm starting this channel the same reasons that a lot of other booktubers have started their channels. The lack of people to talk to about the books that they're reading. I read quite a bit and I read really diversely. But a lot of my friends, if they do read, they don't read as much, and we tend to not have the same tastes in reading, which sometimes is cool because then I get to learn about books I wouldn't ordinarily pick up. But I definitely read a lot more than most people, and because of that, I'm always ready to talk. And they're like, "Oh yeah, I'm still working on that book from last year," and I'm like, "Well, at least you're reading." No judgments from me, but it does make it hard to have like a conversation. So I wanted to do that and be able to share with other people what I'm reading. I also really love sharing some really cool finds from bookstores, especially like indie used bookstores. You can find some really deep cuts from authors' repertoires as well as just some crazy finds. And it's always really fun to like share those really cool books that you find. Sometimes they're funny and sometimes they're for serious, and other times it's just like, wow, I can't believe I found this autographed copy. Where is it? Right here. Of The Fourth Bear by Jasper Fforde, one of my favorite authors, randomly in a bookstore in Corralitos, Oregon. Why is it there? I don't know. Who knows? It's mine now, though, because I snatched that up. But that was pretty amazing fun. You never know what you're going to find. And I want to be able to share these with people who I know will appreciate the hunt of a good book and the searching through a bookstore of any kind and finding something that you've been looking for a while or that you didn't even know you wanted and yet now you own. Number two, what are some fun and unique things that you will bring to BookTube? For a while, I thought my answer, because again, this is a 4-year process for me, I thought my answer was going to be, I don't read YA. And that's going to be automatically something kind of different. But thankfully, over the past couple of years, BookTube has really changed and people are reading much more diversely in different types of genres. And so that's awesome. It means I'm actually potentially going to have an audience. So what I really want to be able to bring is just my deeper cuts, not necessarily reading what every other BookTube reader is reading, although I do get some really amazing recommendations from booktubers online. But I do read deeper cuts. I read a lot more used books, so I'm not getting just the top 10 bestsellers. And then I also have like a very wide variety of what I read. So I start with picture books all the way up to college textbooks at times. I read professional books for my job as an educator. And then I also read a lot of middle grade fiction because that's like amazing now. They're publishing books in middle grade that I really wish I had as a kid when I was middle grade age. So I'm kind of making up for it now by reading a ton of that. And I think that by having a wider variety, there's bound to be something that I read that you might be interested in hearing about. But I also want to highlight some of those amazing independent booksellers that are in at least my area, Bay Area of California, and anywhere else I go, frankly, because if I go to a town, I need to find your bookstore. I also need to find your library, and I need to visit it, like stat. I'm super into visiting them, even if I don't buy anything, although I try to at every indie store. But I do like exploring those places, and I want to highlight those on my channel so that if you happen to come to the Bay Area when travel is allowed, because as I'm filming this, we're in the middle of quarantine and shelter in place for COVID. But when you do get to come and you do get to browse around, I want you to know like, hey, these are some places worth celebrating and worth the trip. And also libraries. I'm a huge fan of libraries. I think they're even more important now than they've ever been. And I want to be able to highlight all the amazing work that's being done there in the realm of literacy. I'm also a huge fan of Independent Bookstore Day, of which I am repping my shirt from a couple years ago. Independent Bookstore Day started in California as California Independent Booksellers Day, and it's now gone nationwide every year. It usually happens in April, but again, COVID means that they've changed it to August of 2020. We'll see how that works, or if they're going to have to postpone it again, because that's all going to be down to safety. But for me, that's my treat yourself day. I'm also a huge Parks and Rec fan, so that's my day where I just treat myself. I go to as many bookstores as possible, and I buy at least something in all of them, and all of them have to be independent booksellers, used or new, it doesn't matter. But we're not going to Barnes and Noble or anything like that. I want to really rep the smaller people, and that'd be really fun to take you along on and talk about the planning for, and then discuss all the hauls, because I do end up buying way too much, but you know, treat yourself. All right, question number 3. What are you most excited about this new channel? Well, I'm really excited to finally have an audience whose eyes are probably not going to glaze over when I talk about books. My friends are awesome, but I can tell that when I start really talking about a book really animatedly, for good or for bad, I can see them like smiling and nodding. Some of you may know what I'm talking about when your friends are just trying to be a good friend and listen, but really they want you to stop talking about that book now. Can we talk about something else? It'd be really nice to be able to talk to a community of people who actually want to hear what I have to say. And even if your eyes do glaze over, I'm not going to see that. So I can still stare at my phone and hope that you're actually excited about it, which I hope you are, because I know I am. I'm also excited about being able to get all those feelings out. Some of the videos I watch the most on YouTube are when people just are impassioned about a book. And it doesn't have to be a rant video. It doesn't have to be a glowing recommendation. It's just when you realize that whatever this book was to that person, they've really made a connection. This has made them stop for a moment and consider life because of what they've just read, whether that's, again, a positive review or a negative review. I really love seeing people get passionate about the things that they've read. And I'm excited to be able to post those videos now about the books that have made me just put them down and like take a moment to reflect upon what I've just read. And I'm excited to share that with people. Number 4. Why do you love reading? Well, geez, why don't I? I've been a reader for as long as I can remember. I remember being able to read basic stories like Dr. Seuss when I was in kindergarten. So I've been a reader for my entire life. I'm 40 now, so feel free to do the math on that one. I don't want to do the math on that one, but I've done it. I've been reading for a long time. And I really read a lot, especially now, for escapism. Being able to go into another fully fledged world that has amazing characters and interesting plots and twists and turns, and I absolutely love just sitting there being fully immersed in a story that amazingly another person has just created kind of out of thin air. I'm just amazed in the process, and I'm amazed at the fact that I get to experience what this author has put out there. And I also consider myself to be a lifelong learner, and not only for work, but just for my own personal fun reading. I read a lot of nonfiction on whatever topic happens to be interesting to me on the day. I've read some really wide-ranging things, from how different types of gemstones are mined throughout the world, to Napoleonic era seafaring techniques, to how the first natural history curiosity closets have turned into natural history museums today. Pick a topic, I will probably have read something about it. And I just love that childlike discovery that I kind of am so happy I have never lost. I can regain every time I pick up a new book. And again, I get to make those awesome videos that I love, where I get to share and speak passionately about a book that has changed my life in even just a small measure. And then maybe you can also pick it up and have one of those amazing moments where you're like, yes, this book, this is amazing. I'm so glad I know this information. I also really love being surrounded by beautiful turns of phrase and language. That doesn't mean that I only read books that are like classical literature, where I have to like drink my tea with a pinky up for some reason. I'm not necessarily like that, although I do read some classics. But there can just be a turn of phrase that just makes you stop for a second and you're like, yes, that was amazing. And it could be amazing, like beautiful. It could be amazing, funny. It could be just a, wait, what did they just say? But I love those moments. Those moments are the best. And that's what I want to be able to share with you. If there's a book that I'm like, oh my gosh, you have to hear this line, I will share that. And I will always give a spoiler alert, because no one likes it when books get ruined, or movies for that matter. So that's something that I really want to share. And that's really why I enjoy reading, is constant knowledge, rejoining of old friends if I'm doing a reread, immersive worlds that take me away from whatever chaos is surrounding us, or to just avoid being alone for a little while, because you never feel like you're alone when you have a book. Number 5, what book or series got you into reading? Well, my family's always been readers. A lot of my family are voracious readers, just not necessarily of the same types of books. But I'm sure that the first book I ever was really excited about was probably a picture book read to me by my mom or my grandma, who lived with us when we were little. But the book I remember reading all by myself with no adult help, also in one sitting, that was the first time I ever just binge read a book, was Bunnicula by Deborah and James Howe. And this is a middle grade fiction book that is about a dog and a cat whose family adopts a potentially demonic rabbit. They're convinced that it's a vampire for some reason. And I won't spoil it. If you have not read this middle grade fiction, it is a classic. It will literally take you a couple of hours to read, and it's very silly. I could not put this down. When I was in first grade, I picked it up and said, this seems weird. And yes, it was. And I read it all in one go, under my covers with a flashlight, and was like, books are amazing. And that's when I realized that I was, competent at reading enough at that age that I could tackle larger books. And that was kind of the beginning of the end. It was Books-a-palooza from then on. The first adult book, which is technically part of a series that I also read all by myself, was in third grade. I picked up Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. This is by far and away my favorite book of all time. And I had already been familiar with the story. My father's English, and he often listened to the radio shows on LP. Again, dating myself. I didn't realize it was a book until he said, well, you could just read the book. This actually is his copy from the late 70s. I was like, oh my goodness, there's a book? Yes, please. And I did not read this one in one sitting, that's for sure. In third grade, I still needed some help with some of the references and some of the vocabulary, but it was mind-blowing for me. This is when I realized that books are not just telling about the world that we know, they can tell about worlds that we don't know about, and you can create whatever crazy nonsense you could possibly want. Up until then, I'd read about realistic kind of worlds where, yeah, it's not really a vampire, right? But it's in a real house with real pets, and it's not really fantastical. This showed me that you don't have to be in the world that you recognize. And I love it. And I reread it every single year. In fact, right now I'm in the middle of my first book. I read all 5 books in the trilogy every summer as soon as school gets out, because I'm a teacher. I'm starting chapter 11 of my reread. Absolutely adore it. And I'm a bit of an evangelist for that one. So if you haven't picked it up, pick it up. I find it to be life-changing. Question 6. What questions would you like to ask your favorite booktubers? Well, this is kind of an interesting one, because in general, I would ask any booktuber who feels like answering down below. Please feel free. What is your favorite type of video to make versus what are the types of booktube videos that you enjoy watching the most? Because you may really love making haul videos, but maybe you hate watching other people's hauls. Like, do you have a crossover point where you love to make them and you love to watch them? I would love to know that. Some of my favorite YouTubers, Cindy at Read with Cindy. I love her editing. Her editing, I think, is just on point, and I would love to be able to learn how to do all that stuff. I think it really adds to the reviews and the humor that's involved. I'd love to know what she uses and how she got the idea to cut her stuff the way that she does. Ariel Bissett is kind of amazing. I've been watching her ever since she was mainly a YA booktuber, back when there was still Booktubeathon. And I love that she's made the leap to adult fiction as well as YA. And I'm kind of wondering how she feels about that decision now. Does she feel like any longing for the YA that she doesn't read as much anymore? Because I know she loves the books that she's reading now, but like, are there any regrets in what has occurred with her channel when she changed over to a different type of reading material? And then lastly, Jessie at Books and Bowties. I love their videos. I'm super excited about their deck of TBR, which is a playing card deck that has different types of prompts on it that you can use to create your TBR for a month or any type of time period. And I am fascinated about how they came up with this particular idea. It's really unique. I know there's a lot of people on BookTube who are doing interesting ways of creating a TBR with like Bookopoly and there's Wheels of Fate and all this stuff. The deck seems really interesting, and I would love to know where they came up with that idea. Number 7, what challenges do you think starting a BookTube channel will be the hardest to overcome? This is an interesting question. If you asked me, first of all, past me 4 years ago, why are you not starting your BookTube channel? I would argue that it was because I really thought I needed a giant camera setup. I really was like tech phobe at the point where I was like, oh my gosh, if I don't have a really good camera, if I don't have really good lighting, if I don't have. So it was this constant kind of like nagging feeling of, well, maybe I should buy this, or I can't start until I have that, or maybe I should do this. And that was easily overcomable eventually because I saw a video from Cindy at Read with Cindy. I will link this particular video down below, but please check out her regular channel. She literally just said, I'm doing this on my iPhone. I don't really bother with specialty anything. Just start your channel. And I was like, wait, what? Like, what do you mean people are just doing this on their phones? And then it turns out, yeah, a lot of people are just doing this on their phones. And I don't need all this special equipment. Just get it started. And so thank you, Cindy, for inspiring me to quit my complaining and quit my procrastination, of which I am expert mode for procrastination, and just getting started and just doing this and just using my phone. I also really was concerned about having to see myself on camera and hear my voice the way everybody else hears my voice. I'm sure there's a lot of people who can understand, like, oh my gosh, is that really how I sound? Is that really how I look? And I was like, I don't know if I could do this. Future me, who's had to deal with distance learning, teaching elementary school students with Google Meets and Zoom meetings and asynchronous lessons that I have to film in my house. I'm over seeing my face. I'm over hearing my voice. This no longer bothers me. So a lot of my concerns from 4 years ago have just magically disappeared just like that. Thank you, COVID. Maybe not thank you, but it is what it is. So now I think more realistically, challenges for me are going to be learning editing. The past couple of months have been a maelstrom of learning, most of which on my own. Thank you to the multitudes of YouTubers who are way better at tech than I am for teaching me and many other teachers how to do distance learning with tech we didn't think we'd have to use with children who don't know how to use it. But I'm still learning editing. I so far have just done my lessons in one take when I'm videoing for things for my classroom, but these videos are different and I really want to do a good job. So I am going to have to really plow through the help of, again, YouTube, how to edit some videos. So for those of you who are interested, I'm going to be using Filmora 9.5. I paid for the version because, again, who knows what I'm going to need for my classroom. But I'm going to be using that. So if you see something that could have been done better or something, I'm not going to take offense at that. Please let me know if you have any tips or tricks, or if you have any YouTubers who are really great with Filmora 9.5 or just 9 too. I don't think there's that much of a difference. That's really where I'm at. That's my learning curve. It seems really steep, but I know that I can get there because a couple months ago, I didn't think I'd be doing any of the things that I'm doing today. I also am concerned about keeping up a regular posting schedule once school starts back again in whatever form that looks like. Teaching is all consuming, and I'm hoping that I'll still have the energy and the time really to constantly be making the videos that I really want to make and be composting with any kind of consistency. So I'm reluctant to say I'm always going to post on Wednesdays because that might not be a thing once school starts, but I do want to make sure that I do certain things every single month so I will post regular content because, again, my editing skills are in the baby steps, like sequence right now, and it's going to take me longer to edit than I think most YouTubers who've had a lot more experience than me. So I figure starting now over the summer when I have lots of time to really get into that editing groove, it'll be easier for me to do it once things get really crazy with my job because it won't be too many new things at once. Question 8, when did you start reading? Like I said before, my family's always been a voracious reader kind of family. I'm sure I was being read too often. By the time I was in preschool, I remember watching Reading Rainbow on PBS, which seriously, watch Reading Rainbow. It's amazing. The app is awesome. LeVar Burton is a treasure. I remember doing my own book reviews with my grandma in her house because I desperately wanted to be one of those kids at the end of the Reading Rainbow episode, which I guess I kind of am now. I made it, Nana. So when I started actually reading myself would probably be around kindergarten, when I can start reading things like Dr. Seuss. One of the first books I remember reading, although I had a lot of help, was Green Eggs and Ham. I thought that was the most ridiculous nonsense I've ever heard, which it still is, to be fair, although he's a bit of a problematic author. But as a little kid, I didn't know about any of that. And it was really fun to be able to say, yes, I can decode this. Yes, I understand for the nonsense that it is. I can understand what I'm reading. I know that a lot of people have influence in their family. And one of the things that we've always done in my family is weekly trips to the library, where we literally had to have a rule where if it didn't fit in your tote bag, then you could not take it out, because my brother and I would want to walk away with 30, 40 books apiece. And while we probably would have actually read them all, my mom did not want to have to worry about tracking them all down come the next weekend when we had to return things. So we had to have the tote bag rule, which wasn't very fun. It seemed unfair because my Nana didn't have that rule. I mean, this is little kid stuff. We didn't understand that grown-ups can make their own rules. My Nana would also check out multiple new releases. I remember them just being gigantic. I was convinced that every grown-up book was a gigantic book, and she would just plow through those. So I've had some really good role modeling throughout my early childhood, but that's really when I started reading, was when I was in elementary school, early primary grades, and then just never stopped. Question 9, where do I read? Where don't I read? Do I have a free moment? Then I'm probably reading. Lately, because of quarantine and shelter in place, it's either in bed before I go to sleep, or on my couch because it's comfy and I can see outside. I have a nice sliding glass door and it's nice. Sometimes I'll read at my kitchen table if I'm eating or having a cup of coffee or something, but those chairs are not as comfortable for long-term reading. Occasionally I'll take a book down to the park by my house. I like just kind of like hanging out there. It depends. The weather has to be nice. I'm super picky. And if you have long hair like me, you know how just wind, it's like a thing, and it doesn't matter if you put it back. There's always that one strand, and it just takes me out of my reading zone. But I'll read in the car. I usually have at least several choices of audiobooks in my car. I have no problem with reading audiobooks. I have a long commute when I actually do get to go to work, to about 20 to 30 minutes each way. So I plow through audiobooks like crazy. So I can read that, and I've gone to museums just to hang out and read in their courtyard or cafe, which is awesome. Yeah, I'll read anywhere. I don't think there's a place that I wouldn't read. In fact, I don't even buy purses or bags unless I can keep multiple books in them, because I always have to have at least something. For those of you saying, why don't you have an e-reader? They're not my jam, man. They have a purpose for people, and if you love yours, more power to you. For me, it's almost like fetishistic to like hold the book in your hand. I love seeing how many pages I have left. I love the feel of it. There's some paper that's just amazing to feel. Audio is just out of necessity, really, because I can't physically read a book and drive a car legally or safely. But the e-reader it takes me out of it. I don't like looking at a screen that much all day. There are times when I don't know where my phone is when I'm home. I just don't have it on me. I'm not a screen person, but I'm not really a digital native, no, am I? So maybe that's it. However, I think that there are some really good reasons for me to pick one up one day if my eyesight gets really bad. My stepdad had an e-reader because he had diabetes, and his eyes were getting so bad that he needed to be able to change the font size. So I'm like, I am not anti for life, but for me, it'll be a means to an end as opposed to the only thing. Question 10. What kinds of books do you like to read? Here's the big one, right? This is the question everyone wants to know. What do you read? So I read really widely. For work, I have a lot of professional books that I read, manuals and how-tos and treatises and stuff like that. I also read a ton of picture books. I teach primary grades as of right now, and picture books are king. So I read a lot of those. I do not plan on talking about those on this channel though, because unless they're really outstanding, it's really kind of out of the scope of this, and I don't necessarily read those for fun. That's kind of for work. I do read middle grade fiction for fun, so I will talk about that. I read very widely in adult fiction. I read the classics, I read modern fiction, I read funny, I read serious, I read biographies and memoirs, but they have to be people who I personally connect with, not just, oh, this person's famous. Like, I don't care. I don't know if the Kardashians have a memoir or a biography. I would not pick it up because I don't really connect with them. I'm not going to judge anybody else for picking it up, but if I'm going to read about someone's life, I have to care about their life. Anyway, I kind of read whatever strikes my fancy. Like, if I do judge books by covers, I do. Sometimes I found some really amazing books that I've seen in other covers. I'm like, whoa, if I saw that cover, I would have never picked it up. It is what it is. I know I probably shouldn't, but here we are. I've also found some really amazing books that I would have never picked up if I hadn't looked at their cover. For instance, Horatio Hornblower series by C.S. Forester. I had no idea that I would be interested in Napoleonic era seafaring. I had no idea until I picked up this book from the library. I was in the mood for a series. The spine looked kind of fancy. And then I saw the woodcutty kind of pictures. I'll move out of the way. Look at that. Beautiful. Every single one in this edition has that. I am a sucker for woodcuts. We all have that trigger, right? When we look at books. That was my trigger. And I'm like, maybe I do want to learn about the high seas and old-fashioned sailing ships. And yeah, I did. I was super here for it. Maybe I'll do a video on just this series and why I think you should read it. It was impressive. I absolutely loved it. And it's all because I judged that book by its cover. If I read the back, I don't think I would have cared as much. So good job, person who designed the cover. Okay, so things I don't read. I kind of put these into two categories. There's the soft no, meaning it's not a never, but it would have to be a special type of book, or a friend or somebody recommending it, saying, no, really, you should read this. And then there's my hard no-goes. Ironically, these lists, as I was going through to decide, like, how would I explain this, are also the exact same things that I would avoid in other media, like music or movies or TV show. So it's interesting. I am consistent across my life. So my soft no's, meaning I'm not going to go out of my way for it. I certainly won't go to that section of a bookstore, but if someone is like, hey, you need to read this, these are books I'd pick up. Horror. I'm just not into it. I don't like being scared. I don't like that angsty feeling from the thrillers where it's like, oh gosh, they're coming to get them. I don't want to know. And I'm not really into gore. So I know not all horror it has gore in it and stuff. It's not just like that. But I think the closest to horror that I ever get is H.P. Lovecraft, which I'm also a little wary about reading because, again, problematic author. If you haven't read about his cat's name, I'll wait while you Google it. No worries. I'll wait. Right? This channel believes that all Black lives matter. So H.P. Lovecraft is a bit of a problem. Anyway. I don't do Westerns. I'm just not into the cowboy pew pew kind of thing. It's just not my jam. However, I am remotely interested in Lonesome Dove, only because it's won a Pulitzer and Supposedly Fun was talking about it. And I was like, oh, maybe I will read that one. Ironically, I have read Larry McMurtry before, but I've only read his nonfiction book about running a bookstore, not any of the books that he's actually famous for. So maybe I should pick that up, but that's a project book. It is long. So that might be later. So that's not a never, but again, it'd have to be a special reason and come highly recommended. Romance, not for me. I pick up the back of a book and it says something like, Mary left the big city to go to a small town to run insert small business here. She thought she wasn't going to make it, but then he showed up. I'm like, no, I can't. It's just not for me. I never found escapism to happen there, and I don't believe in that fairy tale. I don't really like it. I'm sorry. I know people love their romance. Again, it's a soft no. So if you think, hey, this isn't one of those formulaic things. Yes, it's a romance, but it's not that kind of stereotypical romance. Not the bodice rippers, like, oof. Like, I'm down. Please let me know if you think there's something I should pick up. Chick lit, same reason. I don't get it. Again, it's the soft no, but I've never committed to any of them past 50 pages before I'm just like, why am I wasting my time? My TBR is too big for this. And then the big one, maybe a disappointment to some people, but maybe not anymore, because BookTube has changed. YA. I am continually let down by YA. It's like, there's never a there for me. And I want there to be so badly. There have been some books that I have picked up knowing full well that they were YA and thinking this plot sounds amazing. And then you get about a third of the way through and you realize, oh, no, nothing's going to come of this. This is a coming of age story. And as sad as it makes me to say yet again in this video, I think it's twice now, I am 40 now and I'm so far away from that part of my life that I just don't connect with those types of stories. And I'm not into romance. And a lot of YA is about, I found my true love on a spaceship or in a field, or it doesn't matter. There's never been a there. And I have tried many. You don't need to give me recs on that though, because there's tons of people on YouTube who are like, you need to read this YA. And sometimes I'll pick it up. But don't be surprised if I don't ever review any of them here. I'm not a huge fan of like rant reviews for me. Like, I don't think I would be good at them. I'm a huge proponent of DNFs, any of my books. And YAs are a huge DNF pile. All right, the no-goes, absolutely no's. Do not recommend any books to me that have the following. Anything with rape or gore, any glorified violence, glorified racism, as in like the whole point of this is to say, isn't racism cool? It isn't. Black Lives Matter. So I don't want any books like that. It's a trigger for me. I wouldn't want to watch movies with it either. Anything with child violence, like child abuse, it gets me to a point where even if I know that everyone turns out okay in the end, are they though? Because this still happened to them. So those are things that are no's. So it's not so much like my no-goes are not a whole area of reading. It's just very specific tropes or concepts or topics that I'm just not interested in. It doesn't matter if it's by my favorite author. If it's by my favorite author, I'm just not going to read it. And those you can't really convince me otherwise. But the soft ones you can. So that's it. That's 10 questions. So that's it for the newbie tag. I hope it wasn't too rambly. And I hope my editing is at least acceptable for a first go. Please be kind about the editing in the comments. But please let me know if there's anything that you connect with, if you have any questions. The whole point of this is to start a dialogue and be part of the community. So please drop a like and a subscribe. As of right now, I have 0 subscribers. Will you be number 1? That'd be very exciting for me. And even if I only have like 2 people, welcome to my channel. I'm hoping my next couple of videos are going to be my mid 2020 wrap up, since it's halfway through the year, and I figure you can at least know what I've done so far this year, and then I can let you know what my plans are coming up for the rest of the year. I don't necessarily have a TBR list for every month, but I can tell you what I'm working on currently. And then I'm also thinking about doing the Meet the Booktuber tag, so you can get to know me more as a person. But you should know that this channel believes that Black Lives Matter, love is love, and will absolutely support anything with the LGBTQIA+ community. So if that bothers you, sorry. This channel is going to be supporting Indigenous people, Black lives, Latinx, Hispanic lives, immigrant lives, everybody under the rainbow of LGBTQIA+, and all the letters that are left out and currently being added to that increasingly long initialism. That's just who I am as a person, and that's where I'm going to stand as a channel. Anyway, thank you for listening to my long rambly first video ever on YouTube. All right, till next time. Keep reading and have a great day.